All right, I'm live. I had technical issues earlier. It's really frustrating. My old MacBook Pro is too slow and I had some issues. So I had to pull out my desktop out into the room and set it all up. So here we are. So I've got the FX6 and I've got the Ronin RS2 gimbal. And so I actually already built this and set it up and used it on a spec shoot, a spec commercial that I did this past Saturday. But then I had to like tear it down because I was on a job this week and I was renting like my Tear Deck and some other stuff and my batteries. And so I had to break it down a little bit, and so I didn't get a chance to do like an actual video. So I figured I'd just do like a live stream of building this up and like and more of a like a cinema style build. And put it on the RS2. It's very doable. There's a little bit of quirks to it, and there's a couple special items you might need to complete the build, but it definitely works. So let's get started. So as you can see, I have, let me see, switch cameras here. So as you can see, I've got the body, the FX6 body stripped down already. So I normally have like the Tilta FX6 advanced cage, but I had to strip it all down. Got rid of the battery plate, the battery plate here, because it's too big. It sticks out too far and it hits the back of the gimbal. And then I had to get rid of the bridge plate because it makes the camera too tall and it makes it too top heavy. And so it makes it hard to balance, and you kind of reach the physical limits of balancing with this on there, because you want the center of gravity as low as possible to balance on there. Now on the camera, I do have this Metabones EF to E mount adapter, or E mount to EF, because I use my Leica R primes that have been cinemodded by Duclos, and they've switched out the modded the mount from R mount to EF. So these are what I used and what I use on this camera most of the time. And so now this bridge plate does have this support here for this mount, because if you have like a motor, like the nucleus motor on there, and it torques too hard, it'll spin this mount and it'll shift the image as you're pulling focus. So it's really good to have this support on there, but unfortunately I had to take it off. And you know, you can see here, this is where it kind of comes into the bottom, and it just supports it, so it keeps it from rotating. You can kind of hear, I don't know if you can hear that, but it clicks a little bit. But it doesn't. I did test it out before we started shooting. There is no image shift or anything like that. This Metabones like cine mount that they have is pretty solid, and so I think in the future, if I do this build again, the RS2 plate does have a ridge for this support, so it glides in there. So let me see if you can see this. It glides in there, so that when you do have something like this mount on there, you can still use this plate. But this is a small rig plate, it looks like. So this is proprietary from small rig, so you would have to get this if you want to use the support, or make, I'm gonna have to like make my own 3D printed support in the future. So yeah, that's what's going on. So on this build, I'm going to have the camera, I'm going to have a Tear Deck transmitter, a nucleus motor, and I will be able to power the camera through the gimbal. So normally the RS2 comes with this plate. This is the basic plate that the DJI gives you with the gimbal, and so that's too basic. Like, it doesn't have any power, so like that's it, that's all you get. You can put the camera on there, and then you have to figure out how to power your camera. But luckily, my buddy who is letting me borrow, or I rented the RS2 from him, he bought this plate, and this plate has power pass-through. So it has 2-pin LEMO, P-tap on both sides. So it has 2 of each. So here, another 2-pin LEMO and another P-tap. So that helps a lot, because then I can power the camera and all the accessories through the gimbal. And I don't have to have a bunch of cables hanging from a battery or down to a battery off of the gimbal, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose of having the gimbal. You don't want cables running off of it. So yeah, let's start building. So I'm gonna throw on a plate here. I've got a 1/4 and a 3/8 on here. You definitely want 2 points of contact on here so that the plate doesn't spin and that the camera doesn't spin. So I highly recommend, if you don't have one of these in your AC kit, definitely get one. It's great for doing this exact thing because you can really crank it, especially when you're doing like bigger builds with like mini LFs or an Venice. You really want to get that plate in there. All right, so for the top, for my motor, what I did is because I have that Tilta Advanced cage, I took one of the rod mounts off of that cage and I'm going to put it straight into the camera. So the nice thing about the FX6 is it has these 1/4 mounting spots all over the top of the camera. So I'm actually going to put this one right here. Now, also one thing to note is if you have this cage and these rod adapters, I can't find the other one here. Let me take it off real quick. They have pins in the bottom of them that I took them out, but there's one here and one here, and on the tilted plate it keeps them from spinning. But so you'll have to take those out. You just need like a little precision screwdriver, which you should have in your kit if you're a first AC or second AC, and just take those pins out so that it can sit flush on the top of the camera. So the reason why I'm doing this is because I like to put my focus motors on top of the camera, because it allows the weight of the motor to push down onto the lens, and so you don't have to, it's less likely to pop off the gear if you do it that way. So I'm going to put this rod in here. Okay, and now for the Teradek, what I'm going to do is I have some dual lock. So this is dual lock. I mentioned this in my AC kit video. You should definitely have a bunch of this in your kit. It is great for sticking stuff to cameras, but it's better than regular Velcro because it, like the name says, it locks into position. Velcro wiggles around and it's not very sturdy. But with the dual lock, I'm going to put it right here. At the back of the camera. Make sure it's stuck on there real good. Okay, and then so here's my Teradek 4K Bolt LT. Now I made this plate. I 3D printed this plate, and you can actually, if you have the LT, any of the LT transmitters, go to the 3D printing video I did, and I have links to this plate that you can 3D print yourself. And then there's some bolts in here, and it bolts in there. And so I put dual lock on here. So when we do like Ronin stuff, I just stick it right on there, just like what I'm about to do now with this FX6. And so I'm going to stick it on here, and it'll actually like really lock in. You can hear it. And so now it does have like a slight wiggle to it, but you can put more. Like I'm just doing the one strip. If you were to put 2 strips on there, it would be really solid. But this is good enough. Like it doesn't really do much. It's not going to wiggle. Like regular Velcro, this thing would be all over the place. So yeah, so I'll put the antennas down so we have height clearance, and then put my motor on. So like I said, I like to go on the top. So I'm gonna have to slide this down more because I'm gonna have very little clearance with the ring, the tilter ring for the RS2, so I'm gonna keep it kind of low on here. So I'm gonna throw on the lens. The one thing that's annoying about this this mount is that it unlocks the opposite of like PL and stuff, so I always go the wrong way. But once it's tight, it's tight. It's on there real good. All right, so now we will line up our gears here. And it's just biting enough. It doesn't have to, ideally you want it all the way on, but I want to try and keep this build as compact as possible. So I'm going to have it towards like halfway to the thickness of the gear. I don't know if you can see. It's like not fully on, but it's on there. It shouldn't come off. Okay, so I've got that. So now I think I can, I'm just gonna start putting cables on. So we've got, let's do our B and C for the tear deck. I'm just gonna go into the SDI out. Try to tidy this up a little bit. There we go. I'll clean that up later. It sticks out a little bit. Let's see if we can do this a different way. There we go. Okay. And now power. I'll run this around and then I'll go into that plate. And then we have, so for the nucleus, I do have start stop. So what I have, or run stop as they say, start stop, run stop, either. I have this link cable, so it's a little, what looks like a little headphone jack, and and then it goes into the proprietary, nucleus motor. But this is great because now whoever's my first AC, if they're pulling focus, they can remotely start stop the camera, and they can roll it and cut it, and I don't have to worry about it. And when it's on the gimbal, you don't really want to touch the gimbal. So where it is that it's on, if you look on the side of the FX6, it says remote. So you just pull back the little tab. And then there's, like I said, there's a little headphone jack looking thing in there. And then you just plug the link cable in. And then I'm going to go into, let's go into the closer of the two on the nucleus. You see that? So it's got two slots. So one's going to be for the run stop, and then the other's going to be for power, which I'm going to plug in now. So here we'll just plug in the P-tap power. And I'm going to kind of go over here. And this will plug into that power pass-through plate. So this is why that plate I showed earlier is so great. And you'll see it again in a second if you're just joining the stream. I highly recommend you buy that plate from Tilta if you have an RS2 and you want to do like a more of a cinema build. Alright, so I got that, so it can be tidied up. Alright, and then for power for camera, I'll do this after I get it on the gimbal, but I have this P-tap to barrel 19.5 volt power cable. It's pretty short and it's from Small Rig. It's like, I think like $40 or something like that. And so I bought it just so I could use it on the RS2, because otherwise I would have to use the Sony batteries, which I only have one of, the one that came with the camera, and it adds more weight as well. And so I didn't want to have to buy or rent more of these batteries, and because I already have 6 of these. And so these are what I normally use when I'm doing like handheld or studio mode. So luckily that plate, you can use those those gold mounts on. So I now be able to pass through power through the camera. It'll be a lot easier. So I think we're at a point where we can start putting it on the gimbal here. Here, let me adjust this camera so you guys can see a little better. Okay. So this is that plate I was talking about. So it has the 2-pin LEMO power and P-tap, and it has it on both sides. So that's what I'm going to be using for powering everything on the camera. So we'll slide it on the back. Make sure it's unlocked. Come on. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to get like a rough front to back so when I plug in some of these cables they can reach the right area. Okay. Alright. So now I'm going to start doing power cables. So we'll turn it around here so y'all can see. Alright, so I've got, let's do camera power first. So I have dual lock here. If you can see it, I've got some dual lock that I've put here. And I also have some on the bottom of this power adapter, P-tap power adapter. So I can stick it right on there, and now it's out of the way. It's not hanging down. And then I'm just going to plug right into the 19.5 volt power slot. Need a little more slack. We'll do that after I plug it in. There we go. Alright, so now I can get that in position. And then what I'll do is I'll plug in the power for camera in this back P-tap slot. And the cool thing is it has a little LED, so I'll be able to see from the back of the camera if it's getting power from that little LED. Now, an issue is building right now, I just did a job this week and I rented my Tear deck on the job, and I accidentally left my 2-pin to 2-pin power cable. So I'm stuck with doing P-tap power for the Tear deck as well, because when we shot the commercial, I had my 2-pin power cable, so I just plugged in the camera into the P-tap, and then the nucleus into P-tap, and then the Tear deck into 2-pin. So I can't do that now. So, but luckily, in my kit, I have a P-tap splitter, and so I highly recommend you have one of these in your kit. If you don't, I talk about this as well. If you guys really haven't, if you're really into first day seeing or second day seeing, definitely watch my Let's see. All right, I think I lost power. There we go. I'm back. All right, lost power on one of the cameras. All right, so like I said, if you haven't seen those AC kit videos, definitely watch those because you should definitely have one of these in your kit. So I've got the dual lock on the bottom of it, and then I'm going to put a piece of dual lock Sorry guys, I'm having technical difficulties again. Yeah, I see the audio is gone. Yeah, I think my other camera that I'm using for the close-ups is overheating because it's been on for so long, and so it keeps shutting off. So I'm gonna let it cool down for a minute so I can use it again. All right, so I've got the dual lock. I'm gonna put it on top of that power adapter, so I can stick this right on top of it, and then I can plug into it. It just makes for a cleaner build, and like again, cables aren't hanging everywhere and messing up the balance and getting in the way and stuff like that. Thanks guys. And Max, I think I'm going to be making another day rate video, because just over this year, the first quarter, day rates have been going up, even for non-union. So I'm gonna do a little update video. In commercials, so like specifically in commercials, they've been going up. So I'm gonna do a little update video on that. So look out for that. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to plug the P-type splitter into the front, and then I'll just stick it right on top of that power adapter. Dual lock is sturdy when you really have to push it for it to click. Okay. Alright, so now I know the camera's wide, but I'm going to start plugging in some P-tap here. So I've got the nucleus power. Alright, that's in there. And then try and get that tear deck. I like to wrap it around, but I might not be able to this time because of this power situation. I can snake it through. Alright, here we go. Okay, there we go. So now I've got power for the tear deck, nucleus, and camera. So that's kind of the build. Now we'll just have to get into balancing. So the reason I'm building it on this little tripod is because this motor and the tear deck can bump here for doing one of the balancing positions for this gimbal. So I'm just going to build it here, balance it, and then we'll throw it on there. Because I don't have this battery powered, so I have to put it on there to power it up. Alright, so let's start balancing. So I'm going to unlock the front and back. Alright, so it's already, oh wait, one thing, forgot to throw a battery on the bottom. So the battery on this plate is right on the bottom. There we go. So when you're balancing this, if you have this plate and you're doing something similar to this, like I mentioned, you want your center of gravity on the camera to be as low as possible, because if you don't, then you're going to have to adjust and move it down closer to the bottom here. But if you do that, then this battery is going to catch on the bottom. And I really like these batteries because they're small and they're very light. But there are even smaller ones that people make in Golmec and V-Lock. They're like mini. So those would be really good for a situation like this as well, because then you would have even more. They're like half the thickness of these, so that would be really good for a build like this. All right, so I'm gonna do I'm gonna bounce this. So it's pretty good. It's a little heavy on that side, so we'll adjust. Oh, way too much. I wish there was fine tuning for these like there was in the front and back balance. because it's kind of hit or miss. There we go. So that's good. So now I'll lock that. So when you're balancing that mode, you want it to be straight. Now because I adjusted the lock, it adjusted the weight. All right, here we go. A little bit more. Now it should. There. Okay. So there we got that. So now we'll do front and back. Turn this way. So it's a little back heavy. So I'm gonna unlock it. Slide it forward. Perfect. That's pretty good. I just hate that. Even just locking the slide, it adjusts the weight. It's crazy. So sometimes you just got to go a little bit more, and then you can lock it. And there we go. All right, so let's do the roll now. So it's pretty good. So this is kind of mostly balanced because I did this already. So this is the second time I'm streaming this. The first time didn't work. So you just want it to be level there. So that's good. And then for the pan, I guess this would be the roll. And then for the pan, what you want to do is unlock it and then take the rig and then tilt it back towards you. And I'll see there it's spun a little bit, so it's a little bit off. So if it was balanced, it wouldn't spin at all. So I gotta adjust it. Almost. Is it getting worse or better? Let's see. It's getting worse. All right, let's go the other way. There. So now it's perfect. It's not moving at all. Great. So we'll lock that. We'll lock the motor. So there, it's pretty good to go. So now, let me make sure I'm getting power to everything. So Teradek is on. Nucleus is on, it's calibrating. Yes, Afflux. I definitely went with the LTs because the regular 4Ks, it's that whole sandwich plate. Like you have to put it on the camera on the battery mount, and then you're just every time you're making your camera longer and longer, and I hate that. I don't know why Teradek did that for their regular 4Ks. So that's why I went with the LTs. And like if you're gonna get an LT, you know, I use this 750 on big jobs. Like I just did a Union 3-day commercial this week and I rented on it and it worked fine. We didn't have any issues. And so, you know, if you want to spend the extra money and get the LT Max, you can do that. But it still has the same limitations as far as 4K. You can only do the 4K through the HDMI. So if that's something that's you need, which no one in the industry is asking for that at this time, no one monitors in 4K or anything like that. So yes, I went with the LT because of this small form factor. I hate the whole sandwich plate thing. It's like there's no need for it. All the old ones used to be like this, so why did they? I don't know why they did that. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, cool. I think, where was I? Yeah, I think we're good to throw it on the ring now. So let me pull the ring over. So, the cool thing about this tilter ring is that it has power that passes through the whole ring. So like these little mounting points. There's 4 mounting points on the ring that have these pins, and you can get different plates to put on them. Like this one, this is like a gold mount plate, so you can put a battery here. And then this is another battery plate that has 3/8 and 1/4 20. And so I'm going to use that to mount my monitor. Let me see if this other camera is cooled down, so we can get another angle here. All right, yeah, I think it should be. Let's see if it works. Here we go. Okay, so this is that battery plate. So it has, I already got the 3/8 in for my Nova arm, and there's a 1/4 20 here, and there's also some here. It looks like you can get some other accessories here. This is another plate made by Tilta, and then this gold mount plate passes power through it. So, and then also the sorry guys, it looks like that camera's being funky. I wonder if it's because it's dying. No, it should have power. It says this battery's dead. If you guys just wait, I mean, I have a USB battery hooked up to it. Shouldn't die. If you guys give me 1 minute, I'm gonna go get a battery so you guys can see. If I didn't have to do this twice, we wouldn't be having this problem. All right, let's try this. All right, so this battery is fully charged. Let's see. Boom. Okay. All right. Here we go. So, where was I? Battery plate, the power pass through. Okay. Anyway, so the top handle. So the handle that I was using for that tripod that I was balancing with, it unscrews. So it just unscrews, and then now this is the battery. And it's also the handle of the ring, and then you can get power through the ring, but then in addition to that, you get this this other battery plate. So when one dies, you have another option of power. So now for monitoring, I'll set up my monitor. So when I actually shot the commercial last weekend, I borrowed a small HD 503 monitor from my good friends over at MediaBox Camera out in Culver City. They're really good friends of mine, and so they just let me borrow the monitor for free. But for now, for the purpose of this build, I'm just going to use my 7-inch TV Logic. I have, I've got my Mini XLR to PTAP. So just plug in here. And the cool thing about this battery plate that I was telling you that has the 3/8 and 1/4 20s is it also has PTAP power and 5-volt USB. So I don't even have to run cables all over the place. I can just neatly wrap this around my Noga and then just plug it right into the PTAP. Boom. It has power. Now the one drawback that would make the RS2 even better, the one thing it doesn't have, is it doesn't have video pass-through through the gimbal like the Ronin does. The Ronin 2 has an SDI port where you can plug in from your camera output to the gimbal arm, and then it passes through the arm and up to the motor, and so you can then plug out from that top motor into your monitor like this. But the RS2 doesn't have that. If it had that, this thing would be really awesome. So unfortunately, what we're going to have to do is I'm going to have to take, so I got these thin HDMI cables. Now, when I did the commercial and I had that small HD monitor, they also, MediaBox also has really small, thin SDI cables, and that's what I prefer to use because HDMI is so unreliable. And so SDI, the really, really thin ones, and they're flexible, they're really lightweight, are great for situations like this where you're doing like a gimbal or like even Steadicam and stuff like that. So if you do have to tether from one thing to the other, it makes it's so light and it doesn't pull on the gimbal or anything like that. So, but I have these thin HDMI cables that are pretty flexible. So for the purpose of this build, again, we'll do this. And if you're, if you want that 4K image, for the Teradek, this is, well, I guess no. So you would have to go, yeah, you wouldn't get 4K this way. So anyway, so I'm going to go straight from the monitor to the camera. So we'll go to the camera. And make sure on the FX6 you can turn on and off HDMI and SDI outputs. So make sure that when you do this that you have your HDMI and SDI if you're using both. You can have them both on at the same time. So make sure that you have them on.